Welcome back to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We are your co-hosts. I'm Brian.
And I'm Robin Joy.
And this is Coach's Corner. Before we jump into the meat of the episode today, I want to take a minute and just remind everyone about our upcoming workshop.
Yeah, does anybody out there ever feel kind of uncertain when choosing an ASIN to test, like it's a really ambiguous process?
Yeah, maybe you felt like you have to stand on one leg on the second Tuesday of the first week of the month when the moon is in retrograde.
Yeah, don't forget you have to hold your mouth right.
Oh yeah, gotta have your mouth right.
Yeah. Or maybe Kiva seems overwhelming. Maybe you feel like there's so many data points and you just don't know everything, and you're afraid you're missing something, so you're afraid to pull the trigger. Yeah,
well, we're going to host a 2-day workshop that will demystify the process of building a predictable, scalable, and sustainable book of business on Amazon.
It starts with a simple pre-flight inspection of a listing so that you can answer the question, should I even be looking at this ASIN?
If you get past that, we're going to show you how to apply just three simple yes or no questions that will help you decide whether or not to pull the trigger. Like, is this even a good ASIN to test?
Right. And once you decide to test it, we'll help you implement a framework for a 4-week testing process. This process is clear and methodical, and it'll tell you whether or not you should replenish the ASIN.
In these 2 days, we're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to practice how to apply these critical concepts together. It's intense, it's focused, and it's packed with frameworks, quizzes, and actionable information that really stacks the deck in your favor when finding your first 100 replenishable ASINs.
Or your next 100 replenishable ASINs.
100, yep.
You'll leave with a roadmap that helps you create your foundational book of business over the next few months.
Our next workshop is August 16th and 17th in Nashville, Tennessee.
But seating is limited. This is an intimate setting where you'll be able to ask all your questions, plus you'll get the benefits of hearing all the other questions from the other attendees.
It's dynamic, it's fun, and it's an educational experience where you're going to meet and work with other people doing the same things that you are with similar goals. Now, what we hear from previous attendees when they get back home after attending the workshop is that they feel transformed, from unsure to certain, from cautious to confident, and from overwhelmed to empowered.
You mean they don't have to stand on one leg and hold their mouth right anymore?
Right. You don't get the one leg bigger than the other because you're always standing on one leg.
Yeah.
So if you would like to feel confident about the ASINs that you're picking, well, we would love to see you. Go to provenamazoncourse.com/100. That's provenamazoncourse.com/100. And we look forward to seeing you there because we are inspired by the accomplishments of others.
We're passionate about helping others reach their goals.
And we're committed to sharing the keys to success that have been shared with us. All right.
Yay.
Let's jump into this thing. What are you drinking there, Robin?
Oh,
what are you drinking there?
I got a cup of coffee here.
I wonder where you got that. Well, we've got a couple of topics we want to talk about today. Nothing new, but great to revisit these topics. And I think there is actually some new stuff. There's plenty of new stuff in here. Let me not dissuade you from listening to the rest of the episode.
None of what we ever say is actually new? But we reframe it sometimes, try to go at it a different way.
Yeah.
We're always looking for better ways to be able to break it down and understand it.
Yep.
So let us know how it goes.
So first, we want to revisit what we talk about as 3 governors in the typical Amazon Replens business. This is what we find when we're working with coaching clients and other people that we know in this business. What are they?
Those governors are time, money, or capital, and ASINs.
Now, what do we mean by a governor?
Well, a governor is something that limits you. I would think of the military caravans, right? They have those big trucks and they have governors on them that they can't go faster than a certain amount. They limit them. So a governor is like a limiter you have.
Yeah. So that limiter is what can restrict you from, say, driving faster than 55 miles an hour. Right. In this example that you gave, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so in our Replens business, we've got 3 governors. Usually start off with one is time. We only have a certain amount of time that
Obviously,
we give to
time
the
is
can
limited.
give to the business because we only have a certain amount of time in life. This is why our time is worth more than our money. A lot of times after we get the business going.
Right.
Right.
That's true. But in the beginning,
Yeah.
we have to use all the time we possibly can to help overcome our other governors. Right?
Exactly. The second governor is or can be money. Mm-hmm. Right? How much?
Some people come in without a governor and money. They have unlimited resources. That's great. A lot of people do have money as a governor. So,
yeah, this is just one of those things that people come in usually with a limited capital amount. Mm-hmm. So if we can solve the time problem, then mm-hmm. we've got the time governor, I should say. Then we've got potentially a money governor. Mm-hmm. But the third governor that we talk about is usually the most impactful. I don't care whether you have a governor on time or money, mm-hmm. and that is the governor on
ASINs.
ASINs. Yeah. What do we mean by there's a governor on ASINs?
So even if I had all the time and all the money mm-hmm. to put into this business, if I don't have ASINs, I can't find a way to qualify to put that money in the business in a qualified manner that's going to keep my risk low, right? I could just burn the money, right? Burn the time.
I'm getting a visual. Oh, well, it's really easy to burn the time.
It's really easy to burn the time. I do burn time sometimes.
We all fall into that trap. But if you could imagine that, burning time was like setting money on fire, that might be a little more motivating to not burn time, right?
Right. So what we need in order to give ourselves a little bit less risk is to have qualified ASINs to put that money into. It takes time to find those qualified ACEs and to qualify them, and then it takes money to get them, to test them and see if they will give us some money back, some more money back, right?
Right. So eventually you can solve for all of these governors in your business.
Yes.
Right? When you become the expert in sourcing ASINs, then you can outsource that.
Yeah.
that set of tasks to somebody else and get the time back from that. Mm-hmm. When you have enough ASINs to spend your money on, you don't have actually the money can become a governor usually long term. You usually end up having way more time in ASINs than you do have money.
Eventually.
Right? Eventually. Yeah. And then a lot of times, even if you overwhelm that with money, there's still kind of a restriction with Amazon in terms of how fast you get your money back. So money does kind of always play a factor in what we're doing. But once you prove that you know how to find ASINs, that are low risk, low cost with a high chance for success, and you can execute on those things, mm-hmm. usually money is not a problem going forward.
Yeah. Okay. Once you build it, yeah. So you have to build a foundation. Mm-hmm. So to wrap this all up, I think we could say time, money, and ASINs. Everyone starting out usually has all three of them. Mm-hmm. If not all three of them, at least two of the three, because, your time is not unlimited. A lot of people still have, other jobs or source of income when they start. That takes up a lot of their time. Money, same thing. I'm doing this because I want to make more money, not because I have enough money that I don't need to worry about it. Mm-hmm. And ASINs are almost always an issue for somebody getting started. So you'll have 1, 2, or 3, all three of these governors when you get started.
All right. The one that we hear the most about is usually ASINs. I can't find anything. I can't find anything. I can't find anything.
That's the one that helps overcome the other two, right?
It typically is, yes. But we are really looking forward to starting what we are going to call a new series mm-hmm. of the 7 core competencies in the Amazon Replens business. Mm-hmm. The first of those we're going to dive into today.
Okay, well, can you tell us what the 7 are?
But let's talk about the 7 overall first, yes. These are the ones that we talk about with our coaching clients, with people that we work with each other. Mm-hmm. They are sourcing, shopping, prepping, shipping, repricing, replenishing, and business acumen. Did I just count to 8? I didn't. It's really just
2, 3,
7.
4, 5, 6, 7.
Sourcing, shopping, prepping, shipping, repricing, replenishing, and business acumen. Mm-hmm. Now, the business acumen piece is kind of like always there.
Right.
You always have to have it. The rest of
these... This is your admin piece. This is your keeping track. How much did I make? What's my inventory? Mm-hmm. All the business type things that you have to do.
That are not necessarily related to the other things.
Yes.
Right? But
impacted by.
Absolutely can be impacted by them. But we're going to dive in today to the very first one we're going to call our first competency, which is sourcing.
Okay. So you were telling me this morning, we need to kind of be good before we get into that one. All 7 of these, we need to really be good all around. Have a good, solid foundation in all of these, right?
It's like we have to be our own best utility player, right?
Yeah.
We have to have all around game in order to be good in the beginning with our business. And it's helpful if you've got a partner, right? And you can sort of divide and conquer these things. I still think you should both overlap on what all of those tasks are.
Agreed.
So if something happens to one of you, the other one is not like, oh, shoot, I don't know how to do shipping and repricing or whatever it is, right? But in the beginning, we do have to be competent in all of these things in order to really get our business off the ground.
Right. And so I would say, even if we're outsourcing and we're giving our prepping and shipping to someone else to do for us, we should have a real good understanding of what's involved in that, because we're responsible for everything they do when they touch our business. And if we don't understand what's going on, it's going to be really hard for us to understand why we're getting, maybe we get a shipping problem that we don't understand. We need to get comfortable with those things because it's our business, right? We are the ones that own this business, we being the business owners, right? In our business, we own it, and we are directing all of those things to happen. Now, we don't do very many of those things ourselves anymore, but we did in the beginning until we were very comfortable with every one of those things. And now we know how to direct someone else to do that instead of just having them decide how to do it.
It's one of the things that you need to get good at so that you can train someone else how to do it. And it's not enough. I don't think it's not maybe all that successful long term if you say, hey, Brian, would you train my VA on how to do a particular task? And I would go in and train your VA on how to do that particular task. But guess what? That may not be the way that works for your business. Right. It might be slightly different.
And if you don't understand what you've trained, what Brian has trained your VA to do, then you're not going to be able to know whether they're doing a good job or not.
Right. So when you get good at it, you kind of develop your own standard operating procedures around what it is, any of those tasks that we're talking about, and then you can train someone else on that. This is the great part about this business because you can do that. So in the beginning, you have to have, you have to know how to spin 7 plates at the same time.
Yeah.
But then you start giving those tasks away, and then you're basically left with 1 plate, which is the business acumen piece, or you can be. You can hold on to as many of the pieces and parts as you want.
But you're still watching for those other plates to be being spun properly.
That is a great point that I'm glad you brought up, and this is not on the script. I'm going off script.
Going off script. All right.
But this is the sort of the automation piece that I feel a lot of people think, well, I'm just going to turn on automation and I don't ever have to check on it. And that could be automation in repricing. That could be automation in sourcing. That could be automation in even replenishing and prepping. The automation is not foolproof. You are going to have to get into let's just take repricing as an example. You have to get into, there's 2 parts of repricing in our opinion, or what we do for our business. One of them is a manual repricing that we go through for a 4-week period of time for all of our test ASINs. And then after that, we generally put things on our repricer, though it gets used a little bit less and less these days, but I still know everything about what's going on in that repricer. I know exactly how my strategies are set up. I know exactly how it should be operating. And I would just caution people to against say, oh, I'm going to set up my repricer. Oh, look, it's set up. It's integrated with my Amazon account. Turn the on button on and then don't check on it for 3 months.
Right. And you got to have, you kind of have some flags that flag you. You have a way of kind of checking on that regularly, right? You'll know if something's going wrong because you're doing a high level check on it. Every week, once a week, we sit down and do both manual repricing and then I'm looking over the repricer. And I handle the repricer in our business. Robin should get spooled up to be as good as I am on the repricer. I should.
But Robin generally handles the manual repricing and I will generally handle the repricer. And so, you have to look at this. I have to look at it every week. And there are times when I just look at it, I'm spot checking, yes, that looks great. I don't have to change anything. And that's the way it is more and more because I'm using fewer and fewer strategies within my repricer.
Right.
Right. We just put something on an X% ROI strategy, and that's where it goes until it doesn't sell, and then we move it as we need to.
Right.
But generally speaking, I'm popping in there every week on a schedule to look at what's going on. And if I miss that my scheduled time, then I need to reschedule it so I'm getting back to it.
Yeah. So the point of all this is really have a solid understanding of all the pieces of your business. And that's what this series is going to do. Mm-hmm. It's going to take it piece by piece on these core competencies and help you kind of know, do I have that or not? And do I need to be working on that?
Okay, let's dive into the first competency. I know I teased everyone 10 minutes ago on that. Which is sourcing, right? The sourcing competency.
Right.
There's a lot to do here in the beginning because it's all new. After a while, it becomes old hat and then it's much less to do. It feels like it.
Well, it's true. You get better at it so you can become more efficient. You get... once you've seen a lot of ASINs and you start picking up things that you can look at really quickly that it might take you longer to look at in the beginning. But plan on looking at a lot of ASINs.
Plan on looking at a lot of ASINs.
In the beginning, there's really nothing else you can do until you look at ASINs and choose some, right?
Thousands of ASINs, including your own ASINs. I was telling someone earlier this week, if you can't pull up a keep a chart of your ASIN and tell me exactly what's going on, either why you are selling it, why you're not selling it, why you sold out of it, then you're not comfortable enough yet, in my opinion. So look at a lot of ASINs. The other thing I said was kind of rub them all over you, right? Just get really close with your ASINs so that you know. You know, especially the ones that you're in. This is where you're going to learn the most is the ASINs where you have stock in there.
Right.
But we're always looking at ASINs, always.
Right. And so when we say pull it up and look at your inventory to see, you should be able to tell me about that ASIN. Not because you are in that ASIN so much, but you're in your book of business enough that you know what's going on. You have looked at enough ASINs that you can pull up something in your book of business and say, okay, quickly, I can see a couple of things going on here. Right?
Now, I'm not suggesting you need to memorize all of your ASINs. That's not really what I mean by that. I just mean that you should be comfortable enough with your own ASINs and any that you look at that you can pretty quickly tell what's going on. And that only happens after you've looked at a lot of ASINs. Yeah.
Yeah. Once you've looked at a lot of ASINs, you should be able to pull it up and get better and better at identifying what's going on. Okay, Brian. We've identified 3 types of ASINs that we want to talk about here, right?
Yes. We like giving things names, and so we're going to name these ASINs right now. Okay. The first one is a viable ASIN, and we're going to dig into what that means in a second. Then there's the test-worthy ASIN, and then there's the replenishable ASIN. Okay. So let's talk about what does it mean to be a viable ASIN.
So this is what you always call it bridging the gap, right? We need a source that is a valid source that we've, vetted and made sure that's a good source. And we need an ASIN that we're approved to sell on and that has the things that we need to make sure we should be looking at this ASIN. And we need to put those two together. When we bridge that gap and those two things come together, a good source and a good ASIN, then we have a viable ASIN. We don't know if it's test-worthy yet at this point, but we have a viable ASIN. At any given time in the future, this might become a test-worthy ASIN.
So how do we know if a listing is viable? I mean, if a listing is something that we would want to sell on.
If it's what I said was a good listing?
A good listing, yeah. One of the things we like to do is go through a pre-flight inspection on a listing to make sure some very simple things like, does the title match the picture, match the brand, match the bullets, match the customer feedback? All that stuff kind of needs to flow together well. If you look at that listing and you're confused, probably not one that that I would consider.
Right. Right. If you look at it and it's generic, you're not going to be able to replenish that one.
Right.
If you look at it and it has a brand name, but the brand's spelled wrong, these are things to look out for. And we have a system that we go through when you train with us to identify those, but you probably have your own system. When it's a good ASIN, you would, if it were profitable, sell on that ASIN. And you have a good source. It's not a third-party source. It's not a multi-level marketing source. It's something that is approved by the brand that you're selling. Those kinds of things. So you've got a good source and you've got a good ASIN. You're bridging the gap.
Yep. Then, when we bridge the gap, basically we can build our catalog.
Right.
We can start building our list, our catalog with viable ASINs. I honestly, when I'm building my catalog, when I'm bridging the gap, I don't care whether it's profitable or not.
I don't either.
Even in our very simple 3-step system, I don't care if it's profitable today, because we know that, today doesn't mean anything. I don't care if it's even profitable, 3 months ago. I care about having these things linked up.
Yes.
And usually what happens is I'll have one source for many ASINs. And so I'll have multiple viable ASINs just for one source, or vice versa. Multiple viable ASINs for one listing with many sources.
Yes.
So,
So
anyway.
one to many either way.
Yeah, one to many either way. But build the catalog. This is where you get to, over time, you'll build up a nice catalog, and you'll be able to then check for the next type of ASIN, which is
a testworthy ASIN.
Testworthy ASIN, yeah.
Any ASIN could be testworthy now or not testworthy now, but it might be testworthy in the future. So that's why we want to keep those viable ASINs. So how do we know if it's a testworthy ASIN, Brian?
Well, I think you have to pick some criteria and decide whether that your viable ASIN meets that criteria. For us, we like this simple 3-step check, which I'm not going to get into the details here. But if it passes, or if it meets those 3 criteria, then we say this could be a testworthy ASIN. This is a testworthy ASIN. Right.
So I'll say at a high level what that criteria is for us. We need volatility.
No.
Sorry. What is it?
Sales velocity.
Velocity. Sorry. I can't come up with the right word. We need sales velocity. We need evidence that we're going to be able to get at least all of our money back, if not more. And we need profit potential.
Yep. Right. But whatever that criteria is for you, stick to it. Don't change the rules all the time because of you were standing on one leg on the second Tuesday, the first week of the month, and the moon was in retrograde.
Exactly.
Right? Because what happens there is when things don't work out, you're like, what was I thinking about this? Why is this ASIN even on my list?
Yes. So if you make an exception to your own rules, notate it so you know, hey, that worked really great. Or, maybe I won't do that anymore.
Right. Right. So then you have to actually test the item.
Yes.
You have to send it in order to be able to determine the third type of ASIN.
So this is a place people get stuck too.
Yeah.
Right? We know they get stuck because they can't find viable ASINs. All right. That's the first place. You got to overcome that. Then you get stuck finding testworthy ASINs because you're matching up, you have your criteria, you find it, but then you don't send it in. If you don't send it in, you're not testing it. You gotta send it in. You gotta have a little bit of inventory. We do want you to test small, but you gotta have a little bit of inventory in there to test that ASIN. You really don't know what you don't know until you have inventory in there.
So then we need to determine if it's viable and it was testworthy and we sent it in, is it replenishable?
Right.
This is our third and maybe most favorite type. My favorite type of ASIN.
Everything's your favorite.
No, but really my favorite type of ASIN.
These are the ones that are making you profit,
exactly.
Right?
These are the replenishable ones. These are tested ASINs that met or exceeded our test-worthy criteria. So then, if you've got viable ASINs making a list of test-worthy ASINs and test-worthy ASINs making a list of replenishable ASINs, well, then really what you have to do is make a list every week of your replenishable ASINs that you're going shopping for. Which ones
are you going to go shopping for?
And then add to that what your tests are. Or the other way, we like to flip it around because we like to turn everything around on its head, right?
We like everything upside down.
Start with your test ASINs and then add to that your replenishable ASINs.
Yes, but this is another place where we've seen people fall down. A lot of people fall down in this. They get in the testing mode and they're finding these test-worthy ASINs. They're shipping them in every week. It's going great. And then they forget to do the repricing, to actually do the test on it, right? So that's a place they fall down.
Or they did do that, but they didn't replenish the item.
Right. So remember, all of these things have to be in place to build a book of business. You can't just miss one and think that it's going to keep building. You have to bridge the gap and find ASINs and sources that match. You have to find ASINs that you're willing to test, whatever criteria that is. Then you have to test them to see if they're replenishable. And once you see that and find some replenishables, you have to replenish them in order to keep growing. It just doesn't build unless you do all of those things.
Continuously,
every week.
Eventually, you don't have to do them all, but you have those tasks being done. You've outsourced all those tasks, or at least a good chunk of them.
So this is the competency of sourcing, right? And the skills there are the ability to identify a viable ASIN.
The ability to identify a test-worthy ASIN.
And the ability to identify a replenishable ASIN. Those three things are required to pin down this competency skill of sourcing.
Yes. Now, the next part of this series, we're going to talk about another one of the core competencies. We got 6 more to cover.
Yes, we do.
But I love the way that this comes together when we're talking about a competency. It's not ambiguous. It's not squishy, right? It's very specific.
You don't have to hold your mouth right, stand on one leg.
Yeah, it's very specific about, how do I become competent in sourcing? Well, those 3 things. That's it.
Yeah, be able to identify viable ASINs, be able to identify test-worthy ASINs, and be able to identify replenishable ASINs.
Mm-hmm.
Step number 1.
Step number 1. The rest of it doesn't matter if you can't get through those things.
If you can't get through those things, you're not going to have any of the rest to worry about, I promise.
All right, now I pulled a quote for us this week. I know you're shocked.
No, quote? Really?
Yes.
What is it?
I'm reading the 5 a.m. Club right now because for some reason I have been up every day of the week at like 5:15. For the last, actually since we got back from the Proven Conference, I'm still like on Eastern time, I feel like, right? But there was a great quote in there that I heard the other morning while I was in the gym listening to this, and it goes like this. There's a ton of competition at ordinary, but there's almost none at extraordinary.
That's pretty good. That's right. That's why I say if the ASINs were all sitting out in the middle of the street and we could go pick them up, and it was ordinary, it'd be a ton of competition. It probably would be saturated, but it's not like that. We get rewarded for our extra hard work if we're the ones who are willing to get in there and be extraordinary.
But what's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary? And it's a bit of a rhetorical question because I'm going to answer it myself.
I was going to see what you're thinking there.
Consistency. One of the things, but the one that's most applicable in our business is consistency.
Agreed.
I think another one is longevity. That's one that we just have to wait for time to go by.
And persist.
And be persistent about it, yeah. But if we can be consistent, then we're doing that one little thing. If we can improve 1% a day, if we can improve by 1% a day over the course of a year, we've improved a lot. That's the difference between, in my opinion, ordinary and extraordinary. One of the differences. So all we need to do is make a plan, work our plan, right? That plan says, I'm going to do these things every week. And if we do these things every week consistently, then it's a very small bridge to cross from ordinary to extraordinary.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with that.
You buying that?
Yeah, I'm buying that.
Okay.
You have to do it consistently over time. Okay. When you're trying to get your sourcing acumen down, you're trying to be good at that core competency. What is it that you have to do?
And when you're trying to bridge the gap between ordinary and extraordinary, you know what cures that?
Test more ASINs.
Test more ASINs.